So a little bit more about me. I'm a native to Hilbert, and now I live just outside of that area. I'm 30 years old. My husband and I have two, I kind of already told you, energetic and beautiful children. They're 4 and 2.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you about them because they're very important little people and what I'm gonna kind of share here tonight with you. I've been a part of this, I'm gonna say it, you guys, shit road of a journey of facing ALS for over 2 years now. My mom here in the picture, she's the one in the front in the chair. She has sporadic onset ALS, and she is probably one of my best friends. Aside from my dad, my sister and I are her primary care partners. And I use the word care partners, you guys. I could go on a soapbox about this, or maybe you can ask me at the end. We have time for some open floor. I'm just not a fan of the word caregiver. So you might hear me reference the label care partner throughout here tonight. So, and if you have somebody watching with you that can jot a few notes, I'm really hoping that what I prepared for you tonight, you'll be able to take away one thing. I humbly admit that I'm no expert, and I earned this space tonight as being the presenter because I asked to. And I just want to bring to you guys some encouragement and support. It's the start of a new year. That too has a lot of emotions with it. Like, we're supposed to have this clean slate or a fresh start, but that can get kind of mucky for anybody. And then throw ALS on top of that. Like, I just wanted to bring you guys some really upbeat, encouraging thoughts. So I offer you that I get it. I get ALS. I'm facing it through the perspective of watching one of my favorite people in the whole world right now endure all the things. And one of those things with my mom is the mental aspect of ALS. My own personal opinion is that your medical team, your primary care doctor, your neurologist, his nurse, maybe your physical therapist, a speech therapist, your friends, often your own family, and especially your extended family, they just don't understand more than your physical losses. It's the mental and emotional experiences of someone with ALS or their care partners. So with my story, my mom's depression, anxiety, and overall quality of life remains at the forefront of our fight. And I think that's why I have been just moved so much to share this mindset that I'm really trying to cultivate and grow in myself. So I come from a career in what I call the traditional medical model. And that was a hospital in Green Bay. And for the past nearly 7 years, I was an occupational therapist there. I worked with individuals and their families who were in very serious car accidents, motorcycle accidents, sometimes people in the ICU, people who had strokes, open heart surgery, drug overdoses, your elderly parent who had a fall. It was all the reasons anybody went to the hospital, really. My job was to help them get stronger. And by stronger, I mean more independent, able to take care of themselves, and support the family in taking them back home. And I just left that career in September. I left it not because of all things related to COVID, although I will admit I was one of those burnt out healthcare workers. But because I so strongly saw people and wanted them to be treated differently than what I was experiencing. I truly believe that I found my calling in life. My being a Christian and an occupational therapist means that I understand people wholly or for their whole self, or at least I try. And that means more than usually whatever ailment they were being treated for in the hospital. I felt too often there and their family member who was at the bedside holding their hand, their emotions, their coping, their troubles, that they were having mentally, they were just kind of being ignored. Maybe some of you can feel that same way when you go to your quarterly ALS clinic, or you just go for a routine check with your primary care doctor. It just felt that they weren't being identified. Nobody had the time, frankly, to just catch them or acknowledge them or pick up on the cues. Maybe the provider just didn't feel comfortable. Or maybe they didn't spend enough time to feel the connection with that patient, to ask them about it, or vice versa, that the patient felt confident enough and comfortable that they could share that with their provider. And in my opinion, I think it's our very minds that influence our being. Aside from what makes us who we are physically and, our jobs we fulfilled, past, present, it's our minds really that make us who we are. So it wasn't until very recently that I was reflecting on my life and this season I'm in right now. I began using this term lately, a season, and I think it so accurately depicts that we all have seasons we go through. Some are longer than others, some we hate, some we're fond of, but it speaks to the idea that life changes. So anyways, I was reflecting on this season of my life right now, and I connected some dots. I thought to myself, if I hadn't taken that job in the hospital about 7 years ago, and let me tell you, it wasn't the place I envisioned being a therapist helping rehabilitate people. I had other goals. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't have met all the unique patients and families that I got to serve. And what kind of gives me the goosebumps to think about is I wouldn't have learned the skills that now have equipped me physically to help and support my mom as she loses the abilities to transfer herself anymore. It was those people who are so ill in the ICU, and helping them and support them that can, at times, I feel, mimic mom with where she's at with her progression, physically. So I wouldn't have grown my heart to see people for their whole self if I hadn't seen so many of them at the lowest points in their lives. And I wouldn't develop the viewpoint that I have now on the lack of awareness of a person's mental health, including that of their immediate spouse, or anybody else that's really in their close family circle that kind of knows and sees and gets what's going on. So that all of that retrospect and time I was doing reflecting on, what am I doing? What is my purpose right now? It really stirred in me to move and grow. And so I created what I'm so proud of today, and I just feel is so needed. And that's my private practice I created. It's to serve people like us and others, but I so strongly advocate, and I did cautiously in my most recent years at the hospital when I was learning and growing and reading all the things to equip me when my mom was diagnosed, that here's maybe something you guys could write down if you haven't written down anything yet. You need to create your team. You need to create your team. Maybe it's your tribe, your team, your circle, whatever your verbiage is. And that includes your medical team. If you don't like them, I read this somewhere and I wrote it down. If you don't like them, fire them. If you're not feeling you get the time or the answers you need from them, insist you need more time or you need these answers from them. If you're not gaining anything from them, move on or look elsewhere. We lose too much in this fight, and control is a common loss. But I so strongly encourage you, you always will have the control to pick and choose who is beside you in this season. You have the control to pick and choose who is beside you. And you have the control to tell your story just like it is. Don't tell that nurse you're doing okay when she asks you, how are things going? How are you doing? And you're really not okay. If you had a bad day leading up to that appointment and she asks you that, tell her you're not okay. You don't have to sugarcoat it. Don't let the social worker ask if you're the main caregiver when she's going through her checklist of questions or going through the ALS functional scale, and it kind of pops up. Are you the main caregiver? And what does that look like? If you don't like the word caregiver, this is my story, my soapbox. Stop and tell your story the way your story is told, how you're living it, your way of doing things. And when you do that, you're in control. This isn't a cookie cutter diagnosis. And if you, in those two ways, take those actions or try to grow in those ways of picking and choosing who's beside you and then telling your story the way it is, those are two maybe small but big ways, guys, that you regain control if you feel you've lost control. And then when you do that, you'll find, because I've been working on it the past 9 months, especially, I've kind of tried to just be vulnerable and step into those ways to grow and speak when I go to appointments with mom. When I do, I find that their reception is much different, and we get more out of it, and we don't just fall into their system or their way of doing things. So more about my private practice. I embody all these things. I've kind of cultivated a practice that looks like this. If you need empowerment, if you just wish there was someone who could kind of review what's going on and tell you, hey, you're doing a really awesome job and I see you, I'm hearing you. I can't think of something you're missing right now. I think you're doing your best and you deserve to take a deep breath right now and maybe just focus on this, whatever this would be, because it'll give you the most right now. So if you want someone to really see your routines in your home and not judge you, but rather tweak or coach, coaching is a big service I want to bring to people. If you want to try something new, or you just want to run an idea by me and how you're doing something and put our heads together and collaborate. Maybe it's finding a little bit different routine in your home, or maybe it's suggestions for equipment. I've seen a lot, you guys, with just my role in the hospital, working with those very fragile people, very sick people, all diagnoses, cancer, stroke. Maybe you've had home health care therapies, or you've had outpatient, or maybe you loved that service, or maybe you just felt like they were great, but they just didn't really get ALS. They were kind of applying cookie cutter strategies to your situation. I am that person with you. That's what I want to offer. And I also want to disclaim right now, you guys, we are not at the point in our journey with my mom that we haven't enlisted hospice yet. And so I can't attest to the wonderful things that hospice is doing for people with ALS, no matter where they're at in their progression. Sometimes I do wish we had them involved, but mom is just not ready or accepting of that yet. So I kind of speak to my viewpoint and my experiences, kind of comparing that. I don't feel there's somebody quite like me in why I created what I did. So I'm not asking for you guys to listen to my advertisements at all. I actually wanted to have you ask yourself if these topics or agenda are things that maybe you've been missing out on, or you've kind of neglected, or you haven't really thought about, and see if they could add more value to your life right now. So the first one is empowerment. just feeling empowered. Who right now is your source of empowerment? Who do you turn to give empowerment to? Are you empowering each other enough? Is a lot of the dialogue day to day when you're together. Can you do this? I feel bad, like just more negative dialogue between each other? Or is one of you always bringing the other person up? And then in retrospect, who's bringing that person up? So empowerment is the first topic I want you guys to write down or think about. Secondly, that idea of coaching, just somebody who really will stand beside you and kind of help you navigate the challenge or the situation. Not somebody who's necessarily telling you how to do something, but somebody who's kind of playing and there with you. The next one is self-care. So self-care is a very thrown around word that's used a lot, and it can mean a lot of different things. But the two ways I want you to think about self-care when you're analyzing your season right now is my routine of hygiene, whether it's a sponge bath of some form or still being able to shower, just getting dressed daily, grooming, just that routine of pampering. And then the practice of self-care, how we take care of our whole selves, spiritually, mentally, physically. Are you lacking, or could you grow in that area? And then lastly, just the idea of a focus on growth. Ask yourself, how can I grow? Mom tells me all the time, I wish I could grow. I wish I could grow new muscles. I wish I could grow new nerves and muscles. And that's hard to hear, because anybody who's on here who is care partner, a spouse, you wish you could give them new nerves and new muscles and just take their ALS away, but we can't. So how else can you grow? If it's not physically, is it nurturing your mental self? Is it tapping into spirituality? And I'm gonna say this, maybe if you're missing spirituality in your life and you feel you've tried so many other outlets to feel whole, but you're not getting what you want, you're not feeling that you're still stuck. If spirituality, finding a faith, believing in a higher being hasn't been your jam, you just haven't ever tapped into that, maybe that's something you need to pursue. Maybe that could bring you wholeness in a way that you haven't experienced before. And this could be a topic, another topic, another group, but I know with my mom, and it still fluctuates back and forth, but there was a very long period of time where mom was a pretty devout Lutheran, grew up in a Lutheran home, went to church all the time, but there was a long period of time after getting her diagnosis, and especially around the holidays, where she has this love-hate relationship with God. And again, we could talk about this another time, but I often see when she can get her values back in line with what she knows to her core to be true spiritually, she's a better version of herself. So with that all, I leave you guys with the question, and I know I can say this because I'm living it. I know we wish ALS came with a manual, but it doesn't. Don't you wish there was a coach? And if you say yes to someone who could support you in the ways I've mentioned above, I just want you to know I'm here. Nobody really knows about me yet. And knowing that I was going to have this space to talk tonight and share, I knew this already back in November. I intentionally just left some space with the clients that I am taking right now, because you guys are my soul, my heartbeat of my mission right now, because like I said, ALS is so tricky. It's so gray. It's not black and white. And I just feel in all the providers and all of our medical care team we've run into the past 2 years. And believe me, I seek them out and I try to make sure mom's got the best of the best. I just feel like there's not somebody who's doing what I'm doing. And so that's where I want to bridge that gap if people need extra support. So there's a few ways you guys can find me or connect with me. Obviously right here in this group, I'll pop up on the screen here. I do have a website. I have a phone number. You can find me on Facebook. Even if it's just to connect now that I have you guys, I would love to. I'm hoping we have time for questions. Oh yeah, it's only 5:30. Okay, that went really fast. I told I'm a fast talker. Did you guys catch that all?
Well, and we certainly hope to see more of you around Whitney, and maybe you know, we can get your mom as well if, you know, when she's comfortable joining. I do think the support group is a great outlet for people to share tips, discuss strategies, you know, share where they're at, and get support from, you know, their fellow people with ALS in their communities. So